One corpse explosion clears a whole screen. Bosses, bub, literally get nuked. Since the release of Diablo, everyone always turned corpse explosion into a shadow skill to then get amazing millions of damage over time. But what if instead of that, we just lean into the physical side of the corpse explosion and just make it do the most incredible crits in existence, getting 10, 15, 20 million and beyond critical strikes that radius wise just cover the whole room because of the Black River Scythe. There's actually 3 versions of this build. One is going to really focus on the maximum corpse explosion, pulling things together, using Army of the Dead instead of Bone Storm to summon tons of corpses to also solo every single boss incredibly easy. With the second version, having Bone Storm to make the progress through a dungeon a bit safer for you, that you don't even need to move in a tier 100 dungeon. Oh, and before I forget to mention this, the build can actually be played completely AFK. If a health tide happens, or if you want to farm the Son of Malphis, you can just stand AFK at this brazier and everything will die. You restore life on kill, you explode corpses automatically, and well, things die when they attack you or get killed by your robot. So you can even play this build while doing something else. And the third build is a little hint at the next video where we'll merge this concept together with Bone Spear. Now what we're doing right now is very simple. We throw in blights to pull them together with the Void Aura. That blight with an incredible lucky hit on hit can already create corpses for the first explosion, but also the damage over time creates corpses, and it gives us bonus damage to everyone standing in blight, and then boom, the explosion goes off and just tears everyone into pieces. You can also engage with Blood Mist, making corpses, automatic corpse tendrils, boom, everything dies. You just keep running, don't stop, and everything dies behind you. Let's try things the other way around and start with the gear into the skills, where the skills are even more important than the gear this time. One item to boost this the hardest is Black River. It does work without, but Black River hires the radius of your corpse explosion so much that it hits the whole room. It also gives you another 130x multiplicative on your corpse explosion, plus ranks in Hued Flesh, which is even more corpses, ranks into Fueled by Death, more multiplier, and then 4 to all corpse skills. And that one is so important. My corpse explosion currently has a 161% multiplier, and 4 more ranks gives it another 28% multiplicative damage. That's why every rank more is so important. I'm at 18 out of 5, and I'm also having the Evernight glyph to essentially put this to 22 out of 5. And yes, that's another Evernight here, 28 multiplicative bonus damage. The second component to escalate this even higher is Grasping Veins, Corpse Tendrils, because that's 60% multiplicative damage on the critical strike of the corpse explosion. And since it's a physical corpse explosion now, and not damage over time one, you can critical strike it up like crazy. And here we want ranks on all corpse skills, because that's more damage multiplier, amplified damage, so a cursed enemy takes also more multiplicative damage. Then damage reduction while fortified is insane. 10% intelligence obviously scales our damage also, because int is all damage. The ring simply needs to be Sacrilegious Souls, not even for the automatic corpse explosions. Yes, the lucky hit chance is great for Hued Flesh to make more corpses, but you want also 3 ranks into corpse skills, which is another 21% multiplicative damage. Way too good. And yes, you do get the automatic corpse explosions, which helps a lot. And at this point, this seems a little bit like a Slay More item, but we're also playing the Howl from Below. Now, this is definitely something you don't have to put in, but the interesting part is it gives you 40% more damage on the corpse explosion and turns them into homing skeletons, which helps a lot with the AFK farm, because wherever you consume a corpse, that thing will run in to wherever you want it to be. On a boss, you just killed an ad or something, and like there's corpses just strewn around the bosses, usually useless corpse explosions. Yeah, no worries. Howl from Below will make them come in homing. Also gives you lucky hit chance, so you want that rolled as high as possible. The other 2 stats, Fearing and Stunning, not important. My pens are currently running Disobedience because I couldn't run Juggernaut anymore. I need to have my cooldown as low as possible. Bonus total armor, necessary. Maximum life, damage reduction from shadow affected enemies does work. Damage reduction while fortified, actually better because you're constantly fortifying. With the Black River and a certain glyph, which is actually super crazy. The pens can have 4 ranks in corpse explosion, 28% multiplicative damage. Pick it up. And my offhand is currently a focus. This focus gives me critical strike, lucky hit chance, mana cost reduction, not needed in this case, and cooldown reduction. Very good for your army of the dead that we're playing to make more corpses. But this is where the build changes. If you're dungeon pushing, you can play a Litless Wall and Bone Storm. I'll get over that in the skills section again. If you're playing the boss killing version, you play Army of the Dead and a Focus. This one also hires your sacrifice bonus, so you do even higher critical strikes, even more damage to vulnerable enemies. And in this case, you have even better elemental resistance. But since we're fighting against bosses, you could also turn your bonus elemental resistance over to just even more critical strike. And it might say 6% here. That's wrong, because it's also getting another 60% on top with your skills, which makes this 10% bonus critical strike chance. Flat. Incredible versus bosses, because the elemental resistance is not really needed. Our other ring is playing something incredibly interesting. It could be the Ring of Starless Skies from Duriel, but we don't have just uber uniques like that. Currently, I'm getting critical strike chance, physical damage, maximum life, and maximum essence. The maximum essence could also be critical strike damage. And skills deal up to 20% increased damage based upon your available primary resource when cast. Corpse explosions don't cost anything. You essentially pull things together with your corpse tunnels, which also don't cost anything, with your blood mist, which doesn't cost anything, and then you can cast a corpse explosion for 20% multiplicative bonus damage. That's simple. And if you don't have full resource, you still get bonus damage. You could play the conceited aspect, which gives you bonus damage while barrier, but only with the version that's running the Litless Wall for the permanent Bone Storms. Boots or Flicker Stab. Flicker Stab is quite interesting. It's bonus damage reduction, but it also gives us the cooldown reduction on Army of the Dead as we're dungeon zooming, because you're going to throw in some blights, then dash through them, boom, corpse explosions dead, throw in some blights, dash through the next one, Army of the Dead cooldown up, Army of the Dead, dash through them, free corpse explosions because Army of the Dead makes bonus corpses as well. And then rinse and repeat, and you just never stop dashing and zooming through the dungeon. And if things die, they actually heal you. It's quite fantastic. On top, we started a stupid experiment with the aspect of the Crowned Sage. You heal for 138 life per second for each close enemy, up to 460 life per second. That works with the AFK build, but also with the dashing, zooming build through dungeon. It's quite a fun defensive aspect to keep you alive without having to use potions consistently. That being said, the helmet can easily be the Godslayer crown for a 60% damage multiplier every 12 seconds for 3 seconds, or the Harlequin crest. All stats intelligence, preferable cooldown reduction, total armor and maximum life, something to put on here. The chest running the most important aspect, and yes, I'm not joking, and that is the Blight's Defiled area when spawn pulls in enemies. This allows you to do initial stun, crowd control, hurting minions left, right, and center, pulling them around, and just in total giving you complete control over your opponents. Don't underestimate how useful this is for the build. And yes, again, the Blight has two components. It is the hit, 53% lucky hit chance, and then the damage over time, 53% lucky hit chance divided by 6. Both components do lucky hit and do create corpses. Very good and preferable for me over Bone Spear for corpse generation. And don't forget, it's also 15% multiplicative bonus damage. Just wait for the skill section. Now that chest piece is having total armor, physical damage, super good, maximum life, and it would be good if I had, instead of fortified generation, a damage reduction, fortified, damage reduction, shadow damage affected. That's also what the Blight does, by the way. To give you a little teaser before we go into the skill section, yes, we get 7 glyphs activated to have the maximum multipliers. To the skills now though, we're not using a basic skill, so just decompose, enhance, decompose into 1 point of blight. With Enhanced Blight, that's slow crowd control, and also Supernatural Blight, you and your minions deal 15x increased damage to enemies within Blight. Next is Hooed Flesh. Your damage has up to a 24% chance to create a corpse at the target's location, and that is usually 12. Now it's 24, and against bosses, it's 48%. Running 18 ranks in Corpse Explosion. With Enhanced Corpse Explosion and Plague Corpse Explosion. And Plagued is so interesting because it's 8% damage versus slowed, stunned, or vulnerable, but each of them stacks. So in total, someone is stunned, slowed, and vulnerable, you get 24% damage multiplier on the insane damage we're already dealing. Blood Mist has another 5 points that we have the lowest cooldown on Blood Mist possible, and that's where your helmet could also play the Blood Mist Corpse Explosion aspect. So you're actually getting the cooldown even lower, since Blood Mist, more corpses, more explosions, even easier fights versus bosses. Again, Enhanced Blood Mist for the cooldown reduction and Ghastly Blood Mist for the respective corpses. Grim Harvest into Fueled by Death with 5 out of 3 points right now, bringing us up to 15% multiplier. More points is not really worth it by the amulet because the more points is not as much damage as amplified damage. Because amplified damage at a base does 12% multiplier. Another 3 ranks is another 12%, bringing it up to 24. We also reduce damage taken by 9% and more damage by 6 because we're always close to our opponents. Decrepify into Abhorrent Decrepify for the cooldown reduction to have even more Army of the Dead or Bone Storm. We do have 11 ranks in Corpse Tendrils by now. Yes, 11 ranks due to all the bonuses. It might even be worth it to just jam in points here because it does 20,000 damage base at this point almost. And it does slow the enemy and it does make them vulnerable. Yes, we don't have breaking support, so we do need to make things vulnerable instead of the bot this time. Interestingly enough, since we're playing Void, we can play Reaper's Pursuit for bonus movement speed and also Crippling Darkness to stun things. Because you throw in Blight, pull them together, stun things. Incredible. We are having bonus attack speed, bonus damage reduction, and even more bonus on the sacrifice bonuses with Army of the Dead, making our volatile skeletons explode and leave behind corpses. Because now you trigger Army of the Dead and you get around 20 corpses with huge flesh and these skeletons themselves leaving behind corpses. That 1 point in the Supreme Army of the Dead can actually be cut for even more movement speed on Reaper's Pursuit. Lastly, we're having the Shadow Blight key passive, even though we do nothing with this. Yes, there's the Blighted aspect, which can stack for more damage. But you see in the gameplay that minions don't survive. I mean, if I do 15 million damage, everything just dies straight away. If we were playing the Abattoir of Zir, if the Abattoir of Zir still existed, yes, Shadow Blight key passive would be cool. Shadow Blight Blighted aspect would be cool. But like this build does actually not have a key passive that really supports it. This is just a little bit bonus damage with your Blights, but frankly spoken, useless. Now, if you're playing the dungeon zooming version, you can put out Army of the Dead and you can put in Bone Storm, which gives us more damage reduction and more critical strike damage. Is really worth it. Now, I do play dungeon pushing without Bone Storm and with Army of the Dead because I just get so much used to the build and you're so damn tanky. Choose for yourself. Now the Paragon port becomes so juicy. I love it. First, we're going for the Corporal Glyph for more physical damage multiplier. Also hiring our armor that we're at the armor cap without any problems. A little bit of bonus damage, resistance, and life in the bottom. That brings us into the Flesh Eater board, which is notoriously perfect to go in here because it's just the shortest way. And we're activating the Sacrificial Glyph with Intelligence to have even more damage versus elites, some dexterity, and even more resistance. Take the critical strike notes here, and in total we'll get 40% multiplier after consuming 5 corpses. One single Black River consumes 4 bonus corpses, so you instantly consume 5 corpses and have Flesh Eater active after the first explosion. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Ascent of Death board is essentially a permanent 15% damage reduction because we do always have corpses, more crits, and then damage while healthy. Really nicely boosts the damage, and this board is uniquely good for Willpower Glyph to get it higher. Now up to the top into the Wither board, and here we're just interested into the damage to shadow damage over time affected enemies. Yep, that's our Blight, simply giving us more damage. And then we're putting 65 points into Intelligence for 180% bonus corpse skill damage. It's absolutely incredible boost, and every consumed corpse fortifies us for 800 life and gives us bonus damage reduction. Now every consumed corpse explosion straight away consumes 5 with Black River. That effect 5 times instantly. Going down into the Bone Graft board, and here just flitting through with the Exploit Glyph on the bonus damage to vulnerable, not taking anything else because this hires actually bone skill damage, not physical damage, so it's worthless. Traveling through the Bloodbath board to now activate damage while fortified, and we're always fortified. Also the critical strike damage glyph with Essence for another 200% critical strike damage and the 22% multiplier. Lastly, we're going into the Cult Leader board because here's a little bit of dex that helps us activate Territorium for another 10% damage reduction from close and more damage to close, as we're kind of always close into our opponents. Perfection. Our little robot provides us with Flesh of Adrenaline into tactical, duration, and safeguard support. The safeguard support would probably go out for the Genesis Tuning Stone if I ever get this. And now I did finally get Evernight for the bonus ranks, and that is together with Tempest, Efficiency for bonus critical strike, and Arcing. That hits the most opponents to give you bonus boom boom, and then also even more damage. If you don't have Evernight, I would recommend breaking support for even more vulnerable uptime. Doesn't hurt while dungeon zooming. Alternative, you can strike the Tempest completely out of the equation to play the multi-shot, piercing, and seeking support together with Firefly to have the bot do incredible damage as well against bosses, making boss fights even easier. I thought we had all builds discovered, but ladies and gentlemen, a new age of Necromancer has arrived. Enjoy the Nuke Necro with also a Bone Spear variant on the horizon that does trillions of Bone Spear damage and now also gazillions of corpse explosions on top. If you already want to get ready for that, here's the actual Bone Spear build, and have an eye out for even more awesomeness.